conservative,
Christian, mother, wife,
Air Force veteran,
gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right. So glad to have you with us this evening. Welcoming into the show, Parker McCumber, veteran, award-winning entrepreneur, host of Base Business Podcast. He's an economic policy and political contributor to Young Voices. Thank you so much, Parker, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm glad because you have written an article from the Washington Examiner about socialized medicine. Can you tell us what you're writing about?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought me on for this because it's something I'm very passionate about, and it's something that honestly scares me, and I think we need to have some open discussion about it. If people are unfamiliar, there was recently a story in the news about a 8-month-old baby in the UK named Indy Gregory, and she was diagnosed with a rare disease that essentially doesn't have a cure at the moment and was a death sentence. And the United States, or my corrections, the UK, their courts got involved and said, we're not going to let this family seek treatment for their infant anymore. We're not going to let these parents take their baby to another hospital for care. And they essentially got the courts involved and sentenced this infant to death. And it was under their socialized medicine that they were able to do this. And one of the things that's so concerning to me about it was that there was an outpour of charity and help for this family. Internationally, even the Vatican offered to provide at no expense to the family or the UK government care for Indy Gregory while she underwent experimental treatment. And they offered to transport her at no cost to the family or the UK government. And the UK courts forbid them from leaving the hospital or from taking their child and held that baby until the courts received permission to remove her from life support and ultimately ended her life. And as a parent, a system that could allow, an innocent infant to be put to death like that is just absolutely abhorrent. And I think that as conservatives, as Christians, we have a moral and ethical obligation to oppose that evil.
So I find the story horrifying. I did read up a little bit on it a couple of weeks back. It was going viral because they were saying, that if it was a monetary issue, then that's been taken care of. If it was an issue of there being no other hospital, well, that was taken care of. So there really was no barrier to them stepping aside and allowing the parents to prolong the baby's life, even if they felt it was hopeless. So was it really just, and, pardon my language here, but was it really just a pissing match because they wanted to be the ones to ultimately determine what happened to this baby?
I think that you're spot on when you bring that up, and that's probably what this is about. When I view this and the results of it, it doesn't seem like it's about healthcare anymore. It's about control. And I think the really scary thing about socialized medicine and socialized healthcare is that you're giving up all of your control, not only as an individual, but as a parent or as a guardian. And you ultimately, as we can see now, and keep in mind, baby Indy Gregory isn't even the first infant that they've sentenced to death. I was recently reminded of Alfie Evans in 2018, and I believe an infant named Charlie Gard a year prior, where they've done this, and they take the rights away from the parents, and the state is just overreaching and dictating who's going to receive care. One of the really concerning aspects of this is that socialized medicine in this regard is unable to deal with the unique needs of an individual. And I think that's horrifying, one, as a person, as a patient, but it's especially horrifying to me as a father when I think that I have a 1-year-old daughter, just a couple months older than Indy Gregory, and if something happened to her where I couldn't be able to make decisions for her care to help her seek treatment, I mean, it's horrifying.
It is. It's not just horrifying, though. It's like you found the nexus of evil and command and control in government, where those three things meet. Because I'm like, what were the devil's advocates saying? The ones who were saying, enough money has been expended on her life. Like, what was the reason given that more care couldn't be offered to her?
So ultimately, what the courts ruled was that it was going to prolong pain and suffering for her, and that her outlook for cure or quality of life was poor. And to me, that's even more of an abhorrent and evil answer, because you're not only denying the right to life, you're now denying the right to exist.
So the idea is that they had spent enough. I'm still trying to figure out, what was the good reason that the judge was like, I don't understand. I don't get it.
A very negative outlook, especially where the Vatican had already offered, that experimental treatment and that care at no cost. I think you're spot on when you say it's a control thing. And I think the greater issue is that they didn't want to relinquish that control over citizens. And I feel that there's a snowball effect as we, look at the Democratic Party. They put right on their page that socialized medicine and universal health care are a prime priority for them. And it's on Vice President Kamala Harris's personal page that's something she's championing. And I see these, pushes for socialized healthcare and medicine, and I see these horrors happening, in other nations that have that in effect already. And it's definitely a red flag that we need to have these conversations and talk about the horrors and not let them slip through the cracks, especially when you consider this is from the party that claims they're supporting, an individual's body and their right to choose for their body, is also supporting a system that actively takes away your right to choose and self-determine when it comes to health care.
Yeah. So they've done enough. They expended enough. And so therefore, that's it. That
seems like that was their determination, and I think that's just horrible. Who's to determine where the value of a life ends?
Well, and I also don't understand how, if the parents say, okay, you've done all the life-saving measures, you want to pull the plug. Well, we'd like to move her to another facility because they're offering to continue treatment. And so the people there at the originating treatment would say, oh, well, suit yourself. You obviously have to cover the cost of moving her and blah, 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 because, they're a hospital and they have their own bills and things that they need to meet. It seems like if you've had your hair dyed and you don't like the way it's been dyed and the stylist says, well, I've done all I can do, you don't then stay there for the rest of your life. You get up and you go someplace else and you see if you can get help someplace else. It is normal to move on from a place that no longer wants to treat you. So I'm still trying to figure out, how in the world are we in a position where she would not have the parents wouldn't have the right to just say, I think we'll try somewhere else. I've heard of these stories in the United States as well. It usually involves a child. And it usually involves some doctor or nurse or some hospital system saying, you're not allowed to remove your child from our care. And that's where I cease to understand what's going on. I get if they don't want to treat you anymore. I get that they don't have a vision for further treatment. I don't understand how you lose the actual right to control where your child goes because you've checked them into a hospital.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very concerning thing. I don't know where the line is in the United States or in the UK. And it seems like because that's a gray area for people where there's not something that we understand, that the courts or the socialized medicine can kind of just step in and drive that policy into their arena for control. And I definitely am concerned that this is a play from, malicious actors in government to seize control in that regard, because it's not a far step away from saying, oh, that person has disabilities, well, they can't reproduce. We're not going to allow you health care when it comes to reproductive care anymore. You think about somebody with a disease like this, even the most innocent among us, an 8-month-old child being sentenced to death, is not a far step from just saying, well, you don't get the right to, reproduce. You don't have a right to, continue. And then it's just scary because there's so many possibilities when it comes to how a government could manipulate this kind of control and power against its opposition. A political party could, in theory, then, if they're influencing the government, prevent their opposition from reproducing or seeking care or, life-saving measures. And that is truly horrific as well.
It is certainly just unbelievably difficult. Yeah, my hope and my sincere wish is that every single parent would maybe look into the documents if you're admitting your child to the hospital and you're concerned about their treatment, that it might not be I don't know, the treatment that you're looking at for your child might be you might not get the result that you want, that in the admission documents you have the right to move your child to another location. Maybe that's the answer here. I know in foreign countries those people don't have as many rights as we do here in America, but in our country this should be unthinkable, but we have heard of instances where that has occurred.
And I think I recently read, I'm trying to remember the name of a case in Wyoming or Idaho that's ongoing right now, where a father took his infant into the hospital and they declared failure to thrive. And in reality, the child was just ill and needed a little bit of treatment. And when the child got the treatment, they recovered. But the hospital tried to take the child and refused to let the parents leave with it. And I'm just trying to recall who that was. But I know that that's an ongoing legal battle that's happening right now in the United States.
I don't even understand how it's possible. I mean, you show up to the hospital with your child, they're being treated, and then you say, oh, you know what, we want to take them to another hospital. And then they say, no, we're going to keep treating your child. And you say, actually, this is my child. I want to, move them to another. I want to take them home. I mean, it's the parent's prerogative, unless you're planning on, killing the child. I mean, if you're saying I want more treatment, that's to prolong the child's life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope that there's there has to be in a world where there are millions of lawyers in America, the best place to be a lawyer, there has to be some kind of a recourse here. Lawsuits, litigation, something. There has to be something that can be done. Talk to us about your Based Business podcast before you leave. I was looking at that and I thought, oh, do I have to add this to my list? What do you guys discuss there?
Oh, sure thing. So Based Business is a podcast that I started, also a YouTube channel now, where I'm trying to give back. I feel like I've been very blessed and had a great measure of success when it comes to business and entrepreneurial endeavors. And a lot of that, I think, stems from lessons that I learned while I was serving on active duty in the Army. And I've kind of taken those principles and lessons and as I went, learned how to apply them to the businesses that I was starting and running. And now I want to take those lessons, and I'm sharing those lessons with young entrepreneurs and young business leaders who are trying to grow and develop their skill in that space. And it's really a way for me to pay it forward and help other people so that they don't have to struggle the way that I struggled when I was trying to figure out my entry to business.
I love it. Entrepreneurs. So you guys are like a whole nother breed of like human being, because entrepreneurs have the ability to see past the obstacles to a time where their business isn't struggling anymore and you have stickiness. You stick in, you hang in until that appears. That's not a skill that every person just naturally has. Like, it's a special thing. It's like a special mix. And when entrepreneurs execute on that, that's how we get businesses that we love, like Chick-fil-A or Apple or whatever it is that you're like, this is my favorite business. It's because some person dreamed it up and then wouldn't let it go. They stuck with it until it was successful. That's very unique.
Absolutely, and I definitely think that's a skill that I also honed a little bit in the military. I'm sure you were the same way with it, where you just have to learn to persevere and push through. And ultimately, I think it's the people who can find that level of dedication and that level of consistency who are going to have the most success when it comes to their endeavors and their businesses. But it's a challenge, and you have to be able to stick with it and stay consistent. Wow.
I love it. The military. Thank you for your service. I loved my time on active duty. It was gave me some special skills that I feel like I still use to this day. And also just, I loved being there in uniform and being a part of something greater than myself. It was fantastic. The Based Business podcast, you can find it at audible.com. You can also check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, Young Voices, young-voices.com. Parker McCumber, thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Stacy. You have a great night.
You too. Have a great evening. All right, 866-957-2874 if you'd like to join in. We'll be right back.